Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Practical Training Podcast with yours truly, Mike Bell, brought to you by Practical Training Professionals out here in beautiful Southern Maryland. Thank you again for coming back to the show. If you haven't done it already, make sure you hit that subscribe button, guys. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, make sure to give us a review, all right? Today, we are going across the country over to Arkansas, and we're bringing on Aaron Acklin. Aaron is the owner of Aaron's Gun Cabinet and also the lead instructor for AGC. All right, AGC training. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Aaron to the stream here. Aaron, how you doing, sir?
Pretty good. Yourself?
Man, I'm blessed. We had our first like sub 80-degree day here out in Maryland today, so I made the most of it.
We actually had we were 77 or 75 degrees here this morning with a lot of cloud cover, so we went up to the range and police brass all morning.
So you are a hunter. You're familiar with firearms. Clearly, you're familiar with firearms. When did you get into, like, when would you say you became like a firearms enthusiast, or you got into firearms? Man,
so obviously, just like every redneck, grew up with firearms, loved them, always enjoyed, quote unquote, playing with them, such as BB guns and that kind of stuff, and then. When I got a little bit older, I've got some good or bad advice. All depends on how you want to take it. And he told me, he said, Aaron, figure out what you love to do and then try to make money at it. Don't try to go make a bunch of money to do the things you love to do, to which you'll never have time to do those. So I was like, well, I want to play with guns. And I got the opportunity. I was in IT. I was working for a car dealership, and the owner of that had a pawn shop. And I'd go over there on my lunch breaks, and he kind of just half jokingly said, why don't you just come work for me over here? And I was like, man, you pay me pretty good over there. He's like, yeah, but don't you want to work with cannons? I'm like, yeah. So he gave me like $1 raise, and I jumped over into the pawn shop world and started doing that full time. Became a NRA instructor, just like everybody starts off. Then quickly discovered that was not sufficient. So that started my journey on finding the additional trainings to be, more proficient in teaching people what I was trying to teach them, which was at the time was just basic concealed carry stuff. Mm-hmm. The other part of advice before I actually took the job, I went up to another guy, and the guy told me, he said, well, Aaron, don't get addicted to the paycheck. Otherwise you won't take the chances that you would when you are addicted to the paycheck. So
right.
I was like, yeah, you're right. I make decent money right now. I might as well go do something that I have a chance at, enjoying. And that's what I did. And then about 2 years after running that, I had a disagreement with the general manager. And when you are under a general manager, and they get to win those arguments. So I left that day and opened Aaron's Gun Cabinet with a little bit of help of my dad. So
very cool. And how long has that been?
So that all kind of started in, let's see, I jumped in the firearms industry, you'll say like 2011, and then 2014 into 2011, beginning of 2012, and 2014 is when I started AGC.
Very cool, man. And I bet you've had some ups and downs, right? I'm sure you've had to take some risks.
So if you would have caught me a year and a half ago, this would have been in my basement underneath the stairs, and you would have heard footsteps up top, and me, getting off camera going, shh.
Yeah, sure.
So I ran everything. I'm a FFL, SOT, 72 manufacturer. So get to deal with the silencers and machine guns and all that. And I did that for 6 years in my house. And then with COVID and everything, it actually moved my wife home. She was working from home. And that I quickly discovered that I was not able to work as well as I was working when she was not there. So I got a little shop or a little office space here with a buddy that owns the property. And he, it's kind of fun. It's a funny story to me anyway. I don't know if he laughs at it anymore, but he's like, yeah, we'll make a little spot up top. We'll give you like a, 10 by 10 spot to do your qualifications and do your one-on-ones. You don't need a whole lot. And I was up there when our dozer guy was there. He's like, hey, Aaron, how far you want me to push this back? And I kind of stepped it off, and I stepped to 50 and then to 25. I was like, man, if we could get back here, I'll get 50 yards, and that would be great. and it ended up being a nice 50 by 25 range.
Nice.
And he came up there and was like, What'd you do? I said, I know it's going to be okay. It's going to be fine. And of course it is. He uses it just as much as I do. So, but yeah, so that's how I got into it. I've told my wife for years that, if this year I'm not, out of the basement, I'm going to go sell cars. And then I start thinking about that. And I'm like, I could sell cars, but I'm not. I could sell guns better. I'm just going to continue to sell guns. And my real passion is, I sell guns and we work on them and do all the extra stuff to them, but that gets us to the people who shoot them. Right.
Yep.
So, and that is kind of what I thought originally was just my passion on working with firearms and selling guns, so on and so forth, is ended up being that I love teaching people more than I love selling them the gun. I'll just sell them the gun, but I love teaching them more than anything. And that kind of goes with what's in my family. My mom's a teacher, stepmom's a teacher, my brother's a teacher, and I myself am a teacher. So, yeah.
So I'm going to ask a weird question here. Maybe you haven't been hit with this one. So oftentimes in the industry that we're in here, people, consider themselves firearms instructors. And you've just mentioned the word teacher a bunch, and I've asked other people about this before, because I always kind of get hung up on that. And I don't think people do enough credit by evaluating the language that they use. And in your opinion, do you think that there's a big difference? And maybe you could explain it, what the difference is between an instructor and a teacher.
Well, so an instructor, teacher, or coach, right? A coach is someone who's going to help you get to a particular goal, in my opinion. An instructor understands a flatline range of how to do things, right? And that's why we got the isosceles stance for so long, and that's why we've got the teacup out there and the thumbs cross grip and flat range etiquette and NRA basics. That's what I would say is as an instructor, but a teacher. And, we might have to edit how all this goes, but a teacher in my mind is both a coach and the instructor, and they blend both worlds together, and that the ultimate end goal is to get you to where you want to be, but I also want to take you further than that and teach you and show you that there's a path beyond, if that makes sense. Right. So I don't say teacher a lot when I'm explaining people to, how and why I kind of enjoy doing it. Is I think it's just in my blood. It's in my DNA. I can't fight it. My brother's also a football coach. I also have a little youth team of 5 shooters that I've got that we run through USPSA, IDPA, and all that good stuff. So it is, continuing that future of bringing up responsible gun owners and shooters. We've got to start them off earlier, and that's kind of I think that would be the biggest difference between an instructor and a teacher or coach, right? An instructor is given the playbook, and the teacher and the coach refines their playbook. That's right. Yeah. And the instructor is very, this is not taken away from what you said, is adding to it. An instructor is very hard skills driven. Right. This is the ABC way to get to where you need to be. Whereas a teacher puts the soft skills in, right? Tailors the training to the individual. Doesn't just make sure that they're following the rigid path. Right. Yeah. Hey, what's up, buddy? You got some guests back there. How you doing? You want to speak to the microphone? How you doing, Benjamin?
Hello.
He's saying hi to you.
Hello.
Hello. Say hey, everybody. You're gonna be YouTube famous, man. You show this to all your buddies.
Yeah, that's Benjamin Wayne. You can actually look up the hashtag the Benjamin Wayne, because there's only one Benjamin Wayne out there. There's a couple of videos of him actually shooting when he's like 2 or 3 years old, man. Wow. And that's kind of the thing in all my classes. I like debunking a lot of myths, especially in my concealed carry classes, because that's where all the bad advice comes from. If they fall outside your door, drag them back in. No, let's just not touch the crime scene. How about that? Let's not touch the body. But also, that kids aren't capable of understanding, the dangers of said things. So when he was able to crawl, and I mean, he's less than 1, we actually hung out for a whole year when he was first born, because I was doing everything from the house. So why not just stay with dad, right?
Yep.
He crawled over and he touched the stock of a shotgun, and that was my first real dad moment. And I ran over there, I grabbed his hand and I slapped it, and I said, "No!" I got that dad voice out, and he looked at me and he looked at what he touched, and he looked at me and he started crying. And then from then on, he related that item to being, it's going to get me hurt.
Yeah, it's taboo.
and dad's going to yell at me.
Mm-hmm.
So I started working with him very, very early on. And there was a point I remember where I had to separate blue gun training and Nerf gun training. He was in the bedroom. I walk in and he's sitting on the back. Let me get in camera. He's sitting in the back like this. And where is that blue gun? But anyway, it's a little shield blue gun.
Yeah.
And I come in, and I don't even own a shield. But I come in and I thought, "Oh, hey buddy, what you got?" He goes, "Oh, it's my blue gun." I go, "Oh, yeah. Hey, all right." I checked. It's the blue gun. Hey, new rule. Any gun that looks like a gun, we don't play with. And then from that moment on, he no longer played with that blue gun. He would only play with his Nerf guns.
Sure.
So anyway, that's my boy.
And that's something I'm sure you got to deal with, being, especially being the FFL and running that out of your basement. You got kids, you got wife, you got company, nieces, nephews, all that other stuff, right? Where you have to put in that level of kind of understanding. It's a little bit more difficult. I mean, we push safety for everybody,
Right.
Part of, it's more than just owning the gun. It's about owning the gun responsibly. Right.
That's right.
And then before you even should think about running a gun, you should know how to own it responsibly.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
Carry,
and I think a big thing is people sugarcoat and wait too late and allow Hollywood video games and everything else to teach them. And it just needs to happen sooner, not later. And don't sugarcoat what they are and why you own them. In fact, part of the youth team that I'm running is I take them, and we Ed Monk of Last Resort Firearms Training in Whitehall, Arkansas, another very good instructor group of guys. They do Independence Day talks, and why we have these rights, and he's actually a retired history teacher and colonel, and so I took them down there for 4th of July and made them understand, hey, this is why we have this holiday,
Sure.
Because in my opinion, they're not getting it anymore in the local school districts. They're not getting the education that they need, or the history that they need to know in order to keep the rights that we hold true.
Well, I spoke with Lee Weems recently. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him.
Yeah.
I don't know if we caught this in the podcast episode, if it was kind of in the post, conversation that him and I had, but he thinks it's 2 generations away before, people just, and he used, I don't know if I wrote this down or not. Go through my notes here. Steve Anderson gave him a quote that was, there's people who grew up gun and people who didn't grow up gun. And go ahead.
I'll add something to that. 30, 40 years ago, the guns were more prevalent in the homes. Right. We had them in the back of the windows and in high schools and so on and so forth. And then over the years, they weren't needed as much. They weren't shown that they were needed as much. You didn't have to defend yourself as often, and you didn't have to put food on the table with it. And so over the generations, that gets fewer and fewer. And then when you have an influx of bad things happening, you get new gun owners who for generations didn't have guns in their home. And I think the biggest thing we need to push is the gun ownership aspect of it. And part of gun ownership is knowledge, right?
That's
and
right.
seeking the knowledge. And I think if we could, not to just totally just flubbish the NRA stuff, because it's a good entry point, I guess.
It ain't what it used to be. Everybody knows that, and you're not the first person that's saying that, Aaron.
Right. So I want people to get all education, right? And kind of one of the biggest things that Scott Jelinski asked me, he goes, "Aaron, this is the first time I hosted him. He goes, how'd you get as good as you got?" And I said, one, deep down in my head, well, thank you for thinking I'm good. And two, I guess it was just a refinement of information from all the instructors that I've trained with, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some of their stuff worked, some of their stuff didn't work. Well, how can I blend that to make it my own?
Yeah.
And one of my favorite quotes is an Einstein quote: intellectual growth begins at birth and should only cease to exist at death. So you're always learning every moment that you're awake, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or that you're alive. And then I like to add one extra thing. Hey, Benjamin, plug your ears. You're always choosing to learn, or you're not, or you're choosing to just to be a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
So you can unplug. Okay. So, but yeah.
Sage-like advice from Aaron's Gun Cabinet. I love it.
Yeah. So, I think if people will, and here in Arkansas or in the South, I think a lot of people still have guns in the home, and they still believe that they know what they're doing with them. And I agree. You know how to take the gun, load it and take it off safety and put it on a shoulder or aim it some way and press the trigger. That's like riding a bicycle, man. Once you're shown how to do that, or which end to pedal, you will always know which end to pedal, and or how to balance it. But how well did you ride that bike at 12 years old versus today, right? So you might ramp the bike, do 360s, so on and so forth, but you ain't going to do that after taking 10 years off of it. So if you're not constantly, visiting the skill, repeating it, it's a perishable skill, so it's going to go away. And that goes with even, telling the person the 4 rules of firearm safety. If you're not repeating those to somebody, you will eventually lose that, and then you'll have to go further back in the back of your brain to figure out what it was. I like what my kids added to it from my youth team. We taught them the 4 rules, and I have them repeat them to me, and we quiz them on them all the time. But they added rule 0, and that is don't shoot yourself. And that's I love that. If you don't shoot yourself, you're probably not going to shoot anybody else, and you're going to be safe with it, right? So,
that's big. And you hit on a couple of different things there. I want to pivot back to one of the original things we were talking about there, and that's the future of gun ownership in this country, right? We'll get into talking about the training and the ins and outs of training, and why we train and how to develop those skills and training. For that 3 o'clock in the morning, someone's kicking down the door situation. That's a hell of a lot different than shooting paper on a flat range, right? But the civic responsibility to keep and bear arms, right? If not enough people are practicing that, then eventually that amendment to the Constitution is going to diminish. And it's less about owning the firearm now. It's more about shooting it, right? It's showing and not shooting people, right? I'm not saying that. I'm saying that, as the suburbia sprawls, we're losing ranges. We're losing gun shops. We're losing people like Aaron when everybody can go to that dirt spot, right, on the internet and get stuff there. It's, the presence. I was talking with somebody from the Bay Area, California, so behind enemy lines, if you will, right? Yeah. And he said the local politicians there have made it so hard to even open a gun shop. There are no gun shops in the Bay Area. So even if you wanted to purchase a firearm there, which is incredibly difficult because of these restrictions that they put in place, the restrictions to your right to keep and bear arms, you can't buy one. You can't even find where to buy one because all the gun shops are closed.
And that's another amazing thing to me too, is that the Second Amendment is, as far as my knowledge goes, is the only one that's restricted by any means. We don't restrict.
What do you mean by that? You mean we don't are restrict your
first? Yeah, I mean, how again, we live in a democratic republic where we get to vote people in, and they get to make decisions for us because we think that they were the best ones to make the decisions, and they end up making decisions where it limits your rights or limits your ability to exercise your rights of the Second Amendment. And I just think that needs to be reversed somehow.
Yeah, I agree.
In California, I mean, that's not a joke. I tell people all the time, I was like, well, where can I where can I travel with my firearm? Where can I carry my gun with the Arkansas license? I said, well, as long as you stay out of all the communist states, you'll be fine. And they go, oh, okay. So Illinois, California, and they start naming them without me having to show them a map or anything. So it's no longer a joke.
Yeah, people know.
It used to be funny when you had to explain the joke. It's no longer funny when they're, oh yes, Illinois, and they start naming them off for you.
Let me ask you a question about that. The Arkansas concealed carry real quick. And I know we're kind of bouncing a little bit all over the place here, but so we have up in Maryland, we have the ability with our instructor certifications to be able to teach Utah, Arizona, Virginia, DC, Maryland, and Florida. And you don't have to be a resident of those locations to actually be able to teach that training and deliver it. What are the rules in Arkansas to be
So
well, let me ask you, do you need a license to wear and carry or conceal carry in Arkansas?
So no, we're a constitutional carry state.
Okay.
You can conceal a weapon without a license.
It's for residents and non-residents both, do you know, or just residents?
I know for 100% for residents.
Okay.
If you let me Google, I could find the other one.
Don't worry about it. I'm sure if
we can find it.
I'm there. Sure if it's open for residents, probably open for non-residents.
I'm one of the believers that the Constitution doesn't have state boundaries, and the Second Amendment goes everywhere.
Yeah, I agree. Our politicians don't, but
our politicians do not. No, they do not. But in Arkansas, you can teach, I know there are other instructors that teach the Florida license, and they teach the, what's another one? You named it.
Utah.
Yeah, Utah. There's not a big call for that. And one of the things that keeps that down, honestly, is when you go to buy a firearm, you can't use an out-of-state concealed carry license. You have to be in the state that you have residence of to be able to use that concealed carry license to bypass me calling in the background check. Right. So if you live in Arkansas and you have a Florida concealed carry license, there's a spot on the 4473 where I just write down no NIC check required because there's a concealed carry license. I can't take that because it's not of the state that you live in.
Okay. Can you get a concealed carry license in Arkansas even though one isn't required?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. We're must issue, or shall issue state.
I get it.
So if you apply, unless you scratch your, this is what I tell people when it comes to the qualification, you don't scratch your temple, don't point the gun at me, fire 10 rounds safely this direction, show me that you know how to safely operate the firearm, you're good to go. And that's the state's requirements. When you put requirements on rights, you have to make it easy enough for them all to be able to exercise it, right? So carrying a gun and is a right. So if you put a restriction on it, you need to make it easy enough for them all to pass it. That's why in our enhanced carry is just the Texas qualification, which there's plenty of videos from Ballistic Radio and all of them doing that one blindfolded. So, then you start asking, and you start getting other people asking, well, why even have a standard if it doesn't matter? Well, we have standards to make sure that the ass end of the bad end and the good end, right. And you need to illustrate that in live fire.
That opens up another question here, right? So, so the Second Amendment, right, it's your birthright, God-given right. Upon being birthed in the United States, that at a certain age you have the ability to keep and bear arms for self-defense, right, and to form the militia, if you will. Not that each is dependent on the other. I want to make sure that that's separated, right? Do you think, and we're talking about that minimum standard of training, do you think that it should be a requirement for an individual to seek out some level of training before they just start carrying a firearm around?
Yeah, I'm shaking my head no. And why is because free will, right? I mean, I have free will to drink as much Coca-Cola as I want and harm myself and destroy my body. And I have the free will to seek out training or not. It shouldn't be a requirement for a right. You know what I mean?
Get it?
We're not requiring you to go through a proper etiquette class to speak Southern or Northern or wherever you are, so why would we do that for the second? Now, what I think we should do, we just need to do a better job of explaining to people why they need it, and that their imagination of their, I'm going to be the hero day is not going to go out like they think it's going to go out.
That's right.
And it's so hard, I love, Westside MMA, Westside BJJ, us.
There you go.
I love jujitsu and the fact that it's so humbling in that you no longer, you can't, you never know what to expect, right? Shit, hold on, I lost my train of thought there. I wanted to bring in jujitsu because we were talking about the required training, right?
Mm-hmm. The minimum,
Okay.
kind of like the minimum training that somebody should have.
And putting that on guns. I think we need to do a better job of showing people that they need it, so that they. And it's going to be hard to paint that picture for everybody because the egos, right? You see it all the time in the class. The guy will show up. He doesn't say a lot, but you see he's working super hard, right? Whether it's in the gun class or it's in the jiu-jitsu class, he's working super hard to impress somebody or prove something to himself. If we could, if that guy got that way with no training, we need to find a way to get him there before he gets to that point mentally.
That's right.
If that makes sense. I'm trying to blend two things right now, and I don't think it's working out that well. But forcing somebody to do X, Y, Z before they can exercise their God-given right is not what I think should be done. I think we should be able to find a better way to reach them before they do it. You know,
I understand exactly what you're saying, and
it's in my head. I'm trying hard.
Something else. So
yeah,
you are kind of doing that now by running the guns with the young kids, right?
Right.
If we could, so I don't think that it should be a government mandated thing. Let me predicate this whole conversation on one thing. All right. I'm not trying to infringe anybody's rights to keep and bear arms. I'm a firearms advocate,
right?
An enthusiast. Right. I'm an owner. I'm that guy. All right.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I see people on the range, and I'm sure you do too, have no business touching the gun. Right. And I know it's your right, buddy. It's also your right to stand in front of a cop and give him the middle finger. Doesn't mean you should.
Well, and it goes back to the Einstein quote, right? Intellectual growth. It goes into each person's, how much do you want to learn about this? Mm-hmm. How important do you find it to you to say, I need to be really proficient at, using this thing, because if that small percentage of that occurs to me, I need to be just almost perfect. Because if I screw this up and I shoot someone who doesn't need to be shot, or I shoot myself, or I don't get the gun out in time, or hell, I'm just at home and I do something stupid because I wasn't reminded to be OCD about, taking the magazine out and racking it 4 times. The given statistic of, and I probably need to pull it up, but in 2013, 3,100 people shot, and out of the 3,000 of them, 1,500 of them died because they didn't make it to the hospital, and 1,500 of them lived. But the only reason why they were shot is because they didn't know which side was the bad side. The lack of education.
Where I want to be at with all of this is, and I've talked to some other people in the industry that are really advocates for this, is getting firearms instruction back in schools. If the government isn't, because people like myself, and I'm not sure exactly if you align with me on this, we don't want the government interfering anymore. There's already 22,000 laws on the books, right? We don't want any more laws on the books.
And we don't want to see what that looks like to actually be enforced either.
That's right. So just giving them, saying, hey, you guys need to put some more laws out there that require some minimum level of training before, Johnny fucking knuckle sucker over there ends up, being a good guy at the mall one day and tries to stop an active shooter, right? He's just going to end up hurting more people. Or this is the case I always want to look at, right? If I got two older kids, both of them are driving now. My daughter just started driving. I'm not going to give her the keys to the car and allow her to drive down the street without some training first, right? Because she could either hurt herself or she could hurt somebody else. Mm-hmm. And not only do I care about society, I don't want her to hurt anybody else, but I don't want her to have to carry that guilt of, oh shit, I accidentally killed somebody with my car. Right.
And I think that's where we reach a lot of people, is when we get them to start thinking about that process. Mm-hmm. A lot of people want to come, and it gets down to the way they feel about it. Right. And most normal people do not like guns pointed at them. So they feel like, well, if I pointed at somebody, they're going to respond the way that I respond. Right. So if we get them thinking through that process of, how, go through all the whole steps, you're taking human life. That's when I see people kind of go, you're right. I need to take this a little bit more serious than what I was thinking about, because the person I'm fighting is not me, because that person's at work.
Yeah.
The person I'm fighting thinks completely different than I do. And a lot of people haven't thought about that person, or they don't think how they could possibly get to that point to where somebody would want to do bad things to them. Right.
Oh, yeah.
So when you start getting people that, threat assessing correctly, and that, you're fighting your worst enemy. And when you think about your worst enemy, it's your twin, and that they want to go home just as bad as you do. The only thing that's going to separate you from them is the amount of skill that you have behind the things to protect yourself, whether it be your brain, non-lethals, lethal, so on and so forth. It is, how important is it to you that you want to stay alive, and how much have you thought about that? Yeah. And if you've not thought about it, by God, you need to start thinking about it right now before I start biting your throat.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
One of the things that and we're going to jump around, and you're going to get down this list eventually, but one of the biggest classes, one of the things that I've taken as far as like a self-defense class. So one of the classes that I learned the most out of, and that I've used in parts of the Little Rock ghetto, was Craig Douglas's ECQC. That right there, managing unknown contacts and that kind of stuff. If you carry a gun seriously, and you carry it three out of the 7 days of the week, or you carry it 7 out of the 7 days of the week, you need to be in his class, as far as a self-defender goes. And
I'll look into that.
Yeah. Have you never done Craig's ECQC?
No, I have not.
Oh, bro.
But I wrote his name down here, so I'm going to look into it.
Yeah, you need to jump on that.
So the government and society, I'm piggybacking into my daughter with driving a car. I'm trying to tie this into a kid carrying a gun, right? Mm-hmm. Society doesn't feel comfortable with any 16-year-old driving a car. But that's not a right. I understand, but I'm trying to draw a parallel here. All right. Would society feel better about guns? And that's assuming that they don't feel good about them. All right. Mm-hmm. Would society feel better about guns if they knew that anybody on the street carrying had to take some level of training? Would there be less fight? And let me finish getting where I'm getting at with this. All right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe I'm going to say, yeah, they would say, okay, well, shit, everybody out there with a gun at least knows how to use a damn thing. If I'm walking around, I don't have to worry about somebody accidentally discharging or assessing a situation the wrong way whenever I snatch my kid up because he's trying to steal some shit, right? And yank his ass outside the store. I'm not being a child abuser here. You know what I'm saying? I don't need to get shot. I'm just disciplining my kid, right?
Yeah.
So where can we, without having the government get involved in that, where can we implement that level of training earlier in a person's life that society is going to be okay with? And then how do we sell that to society?
So I think it's going to have to start smaller. And that's going to be all the coaches, instructors, teachers, what have you, starting to go after, it sounds weird, but go after the youth instead of the 25-year-old LARPer or the 35-year-old. Those people, the adults that are wanting the training, are going to come get the training. They're going to find you. They're going to seek you out, especially if you're doing good work, right? Mm-hmm. But what's not going to seek you out is the parent who is worried about them going over to their friend's house and finding their friend's dad's gun and not knowing what to do with it. So if we as instructors start trying to start more youth programs, and not just, air rifle bolt guns, but what they're going to come across, the kids in my youth program, we run Glock 44s, 2245s, the Taurus, PT20, TRX 22. We run guns that they're going to come across that or look very similar to these guns. They're going to know how to load and unload these guns in case somebody tries to show them off while their parents are gone.
That's right.
We have to do a better job of creating better programs that kids are going to want to do. and get involved in. And I can tell you that there's a lot of parents out there that are interested in it, but it's an expensive entry point too, you know.
Not only that, but the liability to be an instructor for something like that, your insurance or whatever it is you got to do, man, you had better be fucking clean. Because if a kid accidentally shoots himself or somebody else on that range, who's responsible? You know,
right. And that's
lots of training.
That comes down to that parent, right? And if the parent, because not everything can be done on the range at once. It can't be done in an hour. It can't be done in 2 days, right? It has to go home. You have to work it at home. You have to, practice the skill and everything else at home. We started off, the way we started off was with all airsoft guns. I had a couple 22s. We'd do airsoft stuff. As long as they were safe with airsoft stuff, we'd end the day with shooting the 22s. And then it got to the point where it was like, man, they're just safe. Let's go.
What's the youngest? What's the age group first?
The youngest is 9 right now. But again, my son, he shoots. He's turning 7 in November, so I don't have an age restriction on it. I mean, obviously, there's going to be the maturity of the child, and the size of the child is also a factor, because that there's not very many guns that every small 6-year-old can hold and operate well.
Limp wrist it.
Yeah, and I see these kids on Instagram and everything else, and I'm glad their parents are getting them involved, and they're holding the gun down here, and then they're bringing their 2 fingers up here and doing that. And I'm just like, they're just not they're just not ready, man. They're just not ready. Just give them a couple years, and I was that dad. I've got a video of me holding the gun basically for my son, and my son puts it in front of his face.
I did the same thing.
He shoots the bottle and all that kind of stuff. So, I've got parents that want to get their 6-year-olds involved. I got, 6 to 15 right now. I think Riley just turned 14 or 15. So she's my oldest one right now.
So there are 2 other activities similar to what you're doing. I guess it's not similar, but complementary, if you will. One of them, I'm not sure if they're in your area, but it's called Project Appleseed. And then the second organization, it's called Kids Safe, SAFE. And it is, it's about teaching kids firearm safety. It's less about shooting those competitions like what you're doing with your team. It's more about everyday kids getting smarter about firearms. And they end up actually shooting 150 rounds, right? 22 down range. So those are 2 things that are happening in the country right now that I know about, that I'm supporting, and I brought them on the show and I plugged them because I want to get national awareness for them. Yeah. Because I think that's where it starts. I think that we need to break down the stigma. There's people, Aaron, that still to this day, I see them on Facebook. I haven't talked to them on the street. They still don't see a reason for even owning a gun, right? And it's like, well, why do you have car insurance? Because what if? You know what I'm saying? You just never know. Well, see, go ahead.
Some of those people, it just hasn't struck close enough to them to realize it. There's all kinds of statistics that are out there. 1 in 64, blah blah blah, and 1 in 80, that will experience aggravated assault, and it doesn't tell you how many times you're going to experience it. It just says that you have the likelihood of experiencing it.
That's
and some of those people have been able to talk their way around bad things in their life and that kind of stuff, and just don't get outside of their bubble, that kind of thing. And I don't want their door to get kicked in for them to wake up, but the world that they're projecting that they live in just doesn't exist, and I'm not saying everybody has to own a gun. That's not always the answer, learn how to physically defend yourself, if anything, if you don't see the need for a gun, well, do you see a need for being able to protect yourself at all? So yeah.
So if we introduce it to people younger, I think that it's going to help remove that stigma in America. They're going to say, okay, the people that are, if it becomes part of Common Core training, if you will, where, in 7th grade, 8th grade, something like that, there's a segment of riflemanship or marksmanship, that every kid has an opportunity to take.
That goes against the agenda. I want it back. I know it. I went to Little Rock Central.
And we don't talk about the agenda on this podcast. All right. We serve everybody. Doesn't matter what color you are.
But my back, my high school, they used to have a swimming pool, and they used to have a target range underneath the pool there. It was at least the story, but they used to have those. They used to have them in high schools. They used to teach basic marksmanship and everything else. And I think if we could bring back something that's not an indoctrination of teaching it good or bad one or the other way, but showing what it is and why we have them, why it's a necessary evil. People will I think will start to better understand. But like you're saying, we have to start earlier. We have to get to them sooner. We have to get it in it needs to be prevalent everywhere. Right now we're losing the social media, the Googles, and how information's delivered. We're losing that. We're being filtered. We're monetized heavily. In fact, this is not going to go anywhere because it says Aaron's gun cabinet. And when
I put AGC in the title.
There you go. I'm telling you, and do liberal arts training. It will go far. When I thought of my business name, it was back when Facebook, you could sell guns, and you could network really well on Facebook. And when the agent asked me, well, what's the name of your company? I was like, again, I'm in my basement, right? I'm like, I look over at this little wooden little wooden gun cabinet I had, and I was like, Aaron's gun cabinet. Yeah, that's going to work. Let's do that.
I'm gonna look at the name of our company, PTP Gun. It's in the name, right?
Right.
We are actually practical training professionals. But the website is PTP Gun. Everything is PTP Gun.
Yep.
Back in 2016, 17, you could post ads. You could get into groups. You could, share. You could, even outside of selling guns, just, selling classes. And now it's like, if you even go to run an ad and gun is anywhere in the title, you're getting flagged.
Dude,
big time. There is, if we want to use that term, cancel. Right. There is an active effort to cancel anything Second Amendment related on the internet.
It doesn't take much to understand that, keywords are important, and keywords can be focused on, and keywords can be shoved places that aren't going to be seen. So that's like the biggest battle I believe that I've got. In fact, I've done some testing on Facebook to say, hey, have you seen this post? Do you see this post? Like and share it or whatever. And I got one the other day. It got, how many likes did that end up getting? It's like over 200 something and 50 something comments. And I'm like, why aren't y'all interacting with the other ones?
I saw that post. I remember seeing it.
The comments are like, well, we don't ever see it. I'm like, so why are you seeing this one? What's different about this one? What word did I put in here? Algorithm.
It's the algorithm.
Right?
It is.
I need to nerd out more.
Yeah, there's other ways. What do we do before the internet? The problem is we're so dependent on it now that it's how we get served.
To answer that question, what did we do before the internet? I'm not going to answer, because then we get caught. We didn't get caught.
Nah, you're right, man. And I think I kicked this thing till it was a dead horse, man, with the whole. But I think we get education sooner. I think what that does is it raises. If we started today, Aaron, with a kid that's 10 years old, right, and we never stopped, okay, then in 20 years from now, 30 years, when those kids are our age, we've got 2 generations under our belt of kids
they
that
got better
grew
ways
up
to,
with firearms.
And they'll have better ways to keep them safe and keep them, and and that's the thing. People want to say, well, we can make guns safer, by putting locks and everything else. No, we have to make them accessible to be able to use them too.
That's right.
But if we start it and get those generations in there again, it'll just become the norm again. And
that's right.
And that's okay.
It is
perfectly okay. People people have been taught to freak out about these. And, I was asking a guy who's about 10 years younger than me. I said, hey man, when you were going through high school, what were you fearful of? I said, well, active shooters. But yeah, hands down, active shooters. I was like, man, I remember being in 3rd or 4th grade when we had a shooting in Jonesboro, Arkansas. And it comes out that the kids were bullied and everything else. And I vowed to myself, I was like, man, I'm gonna be cool with all the weird kids. I'm just gonna be cool with them, right? But I didn't. Beyond that, I didn't think about it anymore, right?
No.
But they were in their face, every 2 weeks, another active shooter, another shooting around a school. And that's what they would count. They would count the guys who shot each other across the school as a school shooting.
Yeah.
But, when you don't have a fully developed brain, you can't comprehend that how they're tricking you and manipulating you. Right.
That's right.
And so now you're taught to not only fear that, holy shit, I can die going to school, but, guns are bad. And they're right. If we did take away the guns or get the guns out of the people, and that it comes down to how do you prevent crazy people from getting guns, right? Well, you do away with greed, one, because greed will have anybody sell a gun for twice as what it's worth, right? So if you do away with greed, you can do away with a lot. But how do we not violate someone's rights to keep them out of the crazy's hands, right? So people want to go to like medical records and that, and that kind of stuff. And I'm sitting there going, well, I'm okay with, preventing the crazies from getting guns, but you have to do it without violating my rights. You can't violate any of my rights. And what does that look like? Well, it looks totalitarian. It looks, it's impossible.
It is.
Essentially.
It is impossible. It is.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
it's there's a movie about it. I forget what the name of the movie is, but they go back in time to prevent crimes before they happen.
Yeah,
I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, Tom Cruise.
I think it was something. Maybe it was Denzel Washington or something like that, wasn't it? No. I don't know. But guys, I'll find it and I'll put a link down in the description, right? So you guys can find it for yourself. But
somebody will correct us. Somebody will correct you for sure.
All right, I'm going to pivot here. Let me find out a little bit more about you.
Mm-hmm.
So what kind of training are you offering out in Arkansas?
So with AGC, we do just about everything. I've got Nathan Parker of That Shotgun blog. He does my shotgun courses. It's his shotgun course. I just host him a lot. So he's also a local guy. I've got Connor Epps. He works with me. He teaches my carbines class. He was he can chime in. He ran Camp Pendleton for 4 years as the marksmanship instructor. I'm the pistol guy. Really and of course I've got another gentleman, Tim Hitler, Jerry. Some people will know Jerry. He does all my concealed carry classes and helps me with the youth team and some other things. So we're all kind of in it together. My major wheelhouse is the handgun, is the pistol. One of the more, I guess really what my flagship class would be is my handgun refinement course. That is where I get you trying to see things the way I see it. I want you to live inside my brain for a day, taste my ice cream, and then try to get it to where you can self-diagnose yourself and refine your own skill. Just like I said earlier, I took, what this instructor said, what that instructor said, and I mushed it all up and I threw it on myself, and some of it stuck and some of it didn't. So I refined it to make it work for myself. And I try to give people that pathway. Scott Jelinski says, it's not the way, it's a way. And we're here to kind of give you a path to go. One of the other things I was talking to Scott about, it was like, why don't you talk about hand speed or anything? Because you got some people who go, oh yeah, and I used to do this, and I got away from it after asking Scott this, but move your hand like you just you had bacon grease pop on it, how you pop your hand away from it. Now use that hand speed to go to your gun. And when I asked Scott, I said, why don't you talk about hand speed? He goes, once you give them the path and it's efficient, you don't have to talk about speed. The speed will come.
Sure.
It's just let things naturally occur and it will happen over and over again. So the handgun stuff is kind of my wheelhouse. I have a pretty good way to get people sub-second or to a goal that they're trying to achieve. So I've got a couple 6-month programs. I got a 3-month and a 6-month program that I do. It's the bad marketing ploy on it is that I can make you faster and more accurate than John Wick. So if you watch those Terran Tactical videos and slow him down, be honest, Keanu, your hits are shit, bro. we could square those up just a little bit better. But yeah, we take people and drive them past a level of performance they didn't think that they would be capable of. You know, I remember sitting and hovering at 120, 130 all day long with good hits, but I just couldn't break it. You know, I was at that plateau. And then once I got that better path, man, there's some stupid things that I've been able to pull off.
I will be remiss. There's a common question I ask everybody that comes on the show that's important to me. And I want to hit you with at least get this question from you. What are Aaron's 3 fundamentals for responsible firearms owners? Let me preface that while you're thinking a little bit. Okay. And you touched on this a little bit earlier. If I'm a new guy, never touched a gun before. All right. And I come seeking out some kind of level of training. I want to get more comfortable with the firearm. I just want to own one and I want to know how to use it. Okay. Mm-hmm. And you've got 2 hours with me. All right. Why do you want
to use it? Like, you want to own it and you want to know how to use it.
Self-defense. I want to own it to be able to protect my family in home defense.
So once I have that, once I know the context, I will then ask you, or have you mentally gone through everything, all the steps? Have you thought about the worst day of your life? Mental preparation.
Okay.
Are you mentally prepared to have this item? Are you mentally prepared to use this? Do you know when you will use it? What takes you to that point? And then secondly, have you spiritually prepared to lose that? You can win it, and luck can help you get that sometimes, but are you actually prepared to lose? Because if you engage in this combat with somebody, you better be willing to lose.
That's right.
And then physical, you need to be physically fit to be able to do this. It's not, you can be out of shape in a wheelchair, obviously use a gun to defend yourself, but that's just not always going to be guaranteed to be involved, right? If you're caught in the kitchen, your gun's in the bathroom, you're going to have to learn how to fight. So my 3 things, the 3 fundamentals as far as gun ownership is mental, spiritual, and physical preparedness for owning that gun.
Love it. I've never heard it put that way. You really did break it down. It might be because I emailed you the question beforehand. I like to catch people on the fly.
Man, I saw that one. I saw that one, and I was like, man, that is what we try to end most of our videos with. That's what I try to open up with in my class is, you know, the mental aspect, and that goes to. I'll get really nerdy and it with you real quick.
Yes, here we go.
You know, as far as like the mental approach on how we shoot the gun, you know, some fundamentals can be skipped over. Other fundamentals need to be focused on. Gross sight picture versus refined sight picture. How do I mentally approach that? Which one am I going to need? When am I going to need it? How am I going to manipulate the trigger? How am I going to work those mechanics? Right. That kind of internal picture that I see as far as when I'm mentally or working with my gun, right? That mental aspect of it. Then spiritually, I love my gun. I'm involved with my gun. My gun and me are one. Okay, the fundamentals make me one with all guns. And then physical as far as shooting the gun and everything else. You don't have to have. I've taught a guy with, I think he had 7 fingers total. Right. So the physical aspect doesn't all have to be there, but you better be mentally prepared to be able to work it, right? So like breaking down, like even inside of the fundamentals, there's 7 fundamentals. Out of the 7 fundamentals, which were the most important to me, there are 3: grips, sights, how we read those when we need to read them at the distance that we're at, and then trigger control. Grips, sights, trigger, right? And then how we mentally break all those down. Like, what do we need to be doing with the grip to apply the correct leverage? You know, sights, reading them properly. Yeah, have a good one, bro. You know, refined sight picture, that decision making. You know, if it's a mythical creature and it needs to be shot in the light switch for the staple size target hole, what do I need to get there? From everything. I mean, from the grip, trigger manipulation, sights, you know, that kind of thing. And that's where I kind of get to in my handgun refinement course. I try to touch on just weird shit like that on how I see it. Right. And that just, if you live, in my opinion, if you live for those three things and prepare with all those three things in mind, you will be better capable of surviving the situation than someone who's not thought about any of that. It goes to the back to the whole, you better be physically prepared to do fucked up things to me before I start biting your neck, not while I'm biting your neck. Right. And then, have you ever thought about biting a dude's neck? I don't know. But you better start thinking about it. Right. So yeah, those are my three things. Those are my three things for gun ownership those could be like a core, obviously we could break that down probably even in different ways, but I think with that attitude or that mindset, you'll be good.
That's solid, Aaron. I really appreciate that. You took a different approach, and I'm happy you did. Everybody's first is always safety. I always consider that kind of as you mentioned earlier, don't shoot yourself with your own gun. I think
right.
That's like
that's rule zero.
Safety is I'm an engineer by trade. I don't do full-time gun training. So like thermodynamics, right? That's a big word that not a lot of people know stuff about, right? But there is the zeroth law of thermodynamics, right? I think that there's a zeroth law of firearms owners, and that's safety. That's the 4 fundamentals, right? That you should already have the 4 rules of firearm, right? And then let's build on that with our own fundamentals, right? And everybody's got their own strategy. There's tons of overlap. One of my old bosses used to always say there's a city near us. He said there's 50 ways to Waldorf. I don't care how you get there, but you better be on time. Right. So, there's a whole bunch of different ways you could tool that up.
Right.
So, Aaron, where can people find more of you? Right. Because I know you've done really good here, man. If you are not fucking entertained by this gentleman on the other side of the microphone from me, you should be, or you need to get yourself checked out. All right.
Or it just come see me in person and the filter really comes off. Where people
are going to find out you're in a wheelchair. You're talking all this shit.
Well, that's the thing, man. Like I'll just say this for right now. I do not have a filter. If I say anything that offends, turns you off from learning from me, let's be adults. Let's talk about it. And I won't do it to the next person. Sure. I've got a 5-star Google review. I've had that the entire time. I've not paid any money for that 5-star Google review, and that's because I treat people honestly. I'm not going to get rich off one person, but I'll get rich off 100,000 people. Right. So do right by each other. But Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, it's all under Aaron's Gun Cabinet, and just about anything that's an AGC acronym. Also, I kind of run and maintain. So there's Arkansas Gun Courses, Arkansas Gun Club, AGC training. Arkansas Gun Central. I think I might have just said that. But anyway,
you're trying to capitalize, aren't you?
The list goes on, man.
Somebody taught you the tricks.
Yeah. Get the website soon, right? No. So yes, I mean, my heavy preference is on Facebook. That is where I do all the posting. You can send me a personal friend request. I think I've got a little rule in my head. As soon as I see the mutual friends and how many there are and who they are and whether or not I hit confirm on it. But I'm willing to network, put my money where my mouth is, and all that stuff. I'd love to run my gun with just about anybody. So, we do have some. I would say I was going to have Brian Hill come in. He's going to get rescheduled for next year of the complete combatant. We've got Scott Jelinski coming back twice next year in 2022. His instructor course is in May. So if you ain't got nothing to do, come on down. Outstanding course. You don't have to be an instructor to attend this. If you're involved in teaching anybody something about a gun, or how to get better, or you're just curious about becoming an instructor, you can come to Scott's instructor development course. Now you do need a little bit of prerequisite, and that is training with somebody in some kind of shape, form, or fashion before going to his class. But we've got him coming. I'll be in Texas at the BTO range just right outside of Houston in March for my handgun refinement skills course. It's $250. So all my classes, if you catch me here at my home range, my classes generally range from like $150 to $200. We try to keep it on a lower price point. Not only because ammunition is so expensive, but I also have a price book or a pocketbook that I try to get my training out of, and I can't always afford the $1,000 class. So, but if I could squeeze in a $500 class here and there, boy, I would do a lot more, Yeah. And I think, there are, just to talk about this real quick, there are so many classes that are worth $1,000, and are actually probably worth more than the $1,000 you're being charged, as long as you know how to be a good student. But I think a lot of us instructors and coaches and teachers need to start bringing our price points down, not being so prideful, but so that we can start reaching more people, so that we can start introducing people to those kind of trainings. Because, for instance, the good old boy here in Arkansas, man, I've killed a lot of deer and I've killed a lot of duck, and the human ain't much smarter than them. So what the hell can you teach me? We've got to give him an entry level or an entry point that they're comfortable taking to do this. You got to remove the
barriers to entry.
Yeah. I've especially on Nathan's shotgun class, man, he has taken some lifelong duck hunters who have gone, no shit. I mean, it's just some really cool stuff. So,
I'm interested in finding out more about him. I might actually come down to your neck of the woods and see if I can get in one of Nathan's trainings. Where can I find that kind of training? You got a website or something like that?
So aaguncabinet.com is my website. There's a firearms training tab. I try to stay up on top of it to refresh it and always post new listings and stuff. The one that's on there right now is the one for the BTO range. I'll probably do another one here at my home range probably later this fall. So that'll get announced. And then we'll do another carbine class probably springtime of next year.
Okay.
Is when we'll do that one. We've got to do a better job, at least here personally, we got to do a better job of getting our classes out on the calendar. So
I know you got hunting season coming up, and you're a hunter, and that's you're in that neck of the woods. So I know people are going to be coming to buy ammunition from you, but I'd like to see if we can get you up to Maryland to teach a class. We'll host you up here.
Dude, I'd love to.
I think that'd be really cool. I like connecting with guys who seem to have their head on straight.
Y'all don't have like magazine restrictions.
Yeah, we do.
Like that. Oh,
you cannot buy or transfer one here, but you could carry them. You could own them in Maryland.
You can own them. Okay.
Yeah, you can own them.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm down, man. Y'all put it together, and I mean,
I'll follow up with you. I'll follow up with you. We'll bring you down here maybe after hunting season and see. We're supposed to be getting Spencer down here sometime during the winter to take him over on the eastern shore and let him hunt the Sika deer.
Yeah,
right? That'd be really cool.
I knew Spencer would probably want to squeeze the trigger on a deer too. And this goes for anybody, man. Well, not anybody. Okay, look, I gotta kind of know you, but if you want to come to the state and you want to hunt Arkansas, just give me a shout. We'll do a little planning. Probably take you on a thermal hog hunt or something. Oh, dude, I might
put my own name on that list, brother.
That's where it gets fun, man. That's where it gets fun. And if you want, we'll set it up with a machine gun and let it rip.
Shit. All right. Hey, you stay on the line. All right.
Yeah,
but before I hang up here, I'm going to talk to you some more about that. Me and my buddy Ryan, we'll be down there lickety split. I promise.
Cool.
But guys, find Aaron. All right. Help him. You guys all know the algorithm. You know that everybody's trying to shut him down. Help us, help each other, guys. This is an industry. This is a community. The only way that we're going to continue to build this stuff is with everybody's help. And it starts with supporting your local range. And if you're traveling, if you're outside of your local range, if you want to host people like Aaron, you want to head down to Texas and pick them up there, just support each other. That's what this is all about. If we don't continue the mission of supporting each other and spreading awareness of firearms, this right that we love will eventually go away. All right. Amen. Or we're going to have to be prepared to fight our fucking asses off for it. So with that, everybody, do us a favor. If you like what we're doing here, if you like the show, hit that subscribe button. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're audio only, share it with a friend. Let people know we're talking about guns over on Practical Training Podcast. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we're out.
Let's go.